stress for yourself and for the people that you help, and also how to help yourself as you go through grief and stress and caring for others. So I'm going to merge those topics. It's going to be very interactive, and by the end of it, I really hope you'd recognize in yourself and the others that you are helping about stress and caring for yourself. Is that okay? So that's just after 6 o'clock tonight, and we should be well and truly finished by about 8 o'clock, so you can go home. All right, fantastic. So we are going to look at the grief journey with a few little twists and turns today. So how many of you were here yesterday and have already seen this? Just can you put your hand up so I can see it very, okay? All right, and then there are quite a few that haven't. So we're going to unpack the grief journey. How I wish it was truly like this. Because it looks very simple, and yeah, well, that's how it looks. Grief is messy. And when the earthquake happened here, everyone began their own grief journeys from the earthquake. But way beyond the earthquake, we are all on our own grief journeys. Because every one of us in this room have lost someone or something that we have loved. And so we're already on grief journeys. So you can have multiple journeys at once, and you're going to be hearing from someone soon who did exactly that. But so as we unpack this, it's about as close as what I could have a concept to at least give you an idea of a map, but it is not quite as simple as that, as you know. So grief. Grief affects all of us. My earliest recollection of grief was when I was 3 years old. I have a brother who is 5 years older than me, and when I was 3 and my brother was 8, he developed a disease in his hip. And back in those days, a long time ago, what they did to treat the disease was that they had to put him in hospital, and he was in hospital for 5 years. So for the first 2 years of his life, they had him on a bed, pulling the legs out of the sockets. And then for the 2 years, he had his legs in a plaster and was only allowed home very irregularly. And the last year was learning to walk in the hospital. But for the first 2 years, I was allowed to see him once a month, because they said that siblings would take the germs into the hospital. I'm talking 60 years ago. And so my big brother suddenly disappeared from my life. I could see him just once a month. But you know, no one ever sat down and explained to me really what was going on. So it became my normal. And I was fine with that, and until I go through life, my brother came home and of course lived with us again. Going through life, what I would find is if I had to say goodbye to someone, I'd get very emotional about it. And I used to think, why am I being so emotional about saying goodbye? And it wasn't until about 20 years ago when I was going, what's wrong with me, God, when I don't like saying goodbye to people? And he dropped it in my heart. You've never dealt with saying goodbye to your brother once a month for 2 years. And so grief is a profound journey that we can go on. And I have studied grief now since I had a burnout, which is over 30 years ago. And so I really love this subject, and I love your stories. I'm happy to hear your stories and how you got through. But anyway, so we are going to unpack, and that came out of a life full of grief. And we've been pastors for 44 years, doing life with so many people in every area of life. We've done a lot of grief journeys, just like Pastor Ralph. We do it with people. Then on disaster fronts, oh my gosh, uh, at the edge of bushfires and flood zones and cyclones, been right there. So many grief journeys. But it's a very sacred journey. And so as you're going through your own grief journey of the earthquake, as you go through your own grief journeys of what life has brought your way, and as you help others on their grief journey, it is a sacred journey, and it's an honor when people let you walk with them. So I want to unpack this a little bit to you today, and hopefully at the end of this, it's really going to help you, okay? So, let's have a look at the meaning of grief. Okay, right, not liking me again. Oh, that's because I turned it off. Okay. How many of you thought when the light went out, oh no, we're going to be here? I just thought we'd just be talking without PowerPoint. All right, the meaning of grief. So it is our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual response to the loss of someone or something significant. Let me unpack that quickly for those of you that weren't here yesterday. Grief affects our entire being. It affects our physical body in a very powerful way. It affects the way we think. It affects the way we feel. And it can affect our spirituality, whether it's with God or other areas of spirituality which gives meaning and purpose to life. Grief comes and influences all those areas in a very powerful way. And the deeper the grief, the more it will have impact. And what is it in response? What is it in response to? It's in response to the loss of someone, either through death or maybe through a relationship breakdown, or because in your community they've moved away because their home has been destroyed by the earthquake, or it's the loss of maybe working with your workmates. Some of them might have been injured or they've moved away. So losses can be any sort of relationship interruption, breakdown, and I'll leave you that until, okay, come back to life. The resurrection story. So the loss of someone or something. So in the earthquake, people have lost things. They've lost buildings. They've lost homes. They may have lost cars. I don't know. But we can lose other things like our sense of security that we had. We can lose dreams. I guess some of the business owners in the main street might have lost their vision for the business in that street. It might go somewhere else. They're going to grieve that. And so by losing someone or something, that is going to cause grief. Thank you very much, sir, Mr. Fix-It. And so right now, in your community, people are suffering personal losses. You are all suffering some sort of personal loss. Can you identify just one sort of loss that you might be thinking right now? Oh, I've lost something personally. Yeah, think that in your head. And then our community has lost a lot of things. So what have we lost? Personal losses could be your home or your possessions, finances coming in, your sense of security that, yeah, the earth is not as solid as I thought. Your routine may be out of the window, sense of being alone through what you're suffering, relationship pressures, being exhausted. You know, the journey of grief makes you tired. You wake up tired. Why? Because through the night, even when your mind, your emotions are still at work, your body is trying to get equilibrium and it doesn't always work. And so you can wake up really tired. And all the normal challenges of life still continue. Yeah, there's been an earthquake and you might be grieving, but you've still got to get up and you've still got to clean the house and you've still got to, go to work and you've still got to do all the normal and deal with your teenage children or the kids or that annoying relative, it still carries on top of everything that you suffered through the earthquake. That's personally, but look in the community, it's disrupted. You might be living somewhere else, I don't know, but maybe you've lost your house, or maybe you can't go home. It's a huge disruption. How many of you are not working in the same office because the office has been destroyed? Give me a wave if that's you. Whose offices have gone? Yeah? Any more offices? Yeah? It's a disruption, normal routine. Businesses and schools. But isn't it funny? Like, are any of the schools not open so the kids can't go back to school? Because if that's true, some of the kids will be going, yeah, we can't go to school, the school's destroyed, yeah. The parents are going, oh no. But some of the kids will be going, I want to go to school, I want to be with my friends, why? And they're grieving because their routine is out of place. So, it just shows the grief journeys are all so different. And some of the normal ways you would get help might not be there. So right now, there is grief, maybe in your life, different levels, and grief in the community. Again, different levels. We all grieve differently, but there are similarities. Okay, so just want to quickly look at the physical response of grief is amazing. But tonight in the workshop, I'm going to unpack that in depth, and you're going to look at your responses, because grief kicks off your fight or flight response. It does physical changes in your body. You have no control over what that is going on in your body, though you can help minimize it. But it's a natural physical response. Your heart changes, your breathing changes, your muscles change, your digestion changes, your sleep changes. Your alertness changes. There you go. It'll come back by itself, just in case. Okay. And so there are huge changes that if you can be aware of, you can help yourself and help others. Okay? So tonight I'm going to go into real depth of that, because when I studied this, and I'll tell you why I studied it tonight, that's another story, it just made so much sense. And now I am self-aware when things go on in my body. Oops, and you're stressed, you need to do so and so. So that's coming tonight, okay? So that's the physical, I'll watch my screen. Okay, that's the physical response. Then the mental response is the way we think, the emotional, how we're feeling, the spiritual, our connection with God. And I was going to say, look at the screen and have a look at these, which it will come back. Right on time. Okay. So, what do we do with my grief response? We didn't hide that, did we? Oh, okay. I'm going to go backwards. So again, so maybe if you've got your phones, take a quick picture. So if the electricity does go off, you can follow it on your phone, okay? Otherwise, I will draw it. I memorized it. Oh, what's happened to that one? It's coming. You're all used to this, aren't you? Yeah? We're used to it too. All good, not phased. All right, the grief journey. Okay. This is you in life. And then stuff happened. Yes, we're concentrating on the earthquake happening. It may be someone you love suddenly becomes sick, or someone you love dies. It may be that you lose your job. It could be other losses. Maybe your life is going this direction and something happened through no fault of your own and you're going another direction. And when that traumatic things happens, we start down here a maze of emotions and responses. And for most of us, they're very similar, but in different degrees. Now, I've only named a few of those, but there are a huge amount of responses to go through. See this one here, the initial shock? I wonder how you felt when the earthquake happened. I don't want to take you fully back there, but I bet you were like, oh my gosh, and for a moment, there were probably two things happening. I can't believe this is happening. I don't know what to do, and then I've got to leave the building. That was probably ingrained into you. But then it was really hard afterwards of, what do we do now? And for a little while you couldn't think straight. And that's a normal response in the grief journey. Hopefully that doesn't last too long, but for some people they do find it longer to come out of that, I don't know what to do, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't think straight. I live in Australia where we have bushfires. And 20 years ago, my husband and our kids, we were all at home and we heard a crack. We thought, what was that? So about 5 minutes later, I just went to hang something out on my washing line, and across the road, just from this wall to where that wall is there was a 30-foot wall of flame. Some wires, power lines had arced, gone into the bush where we live, and just had this massive wall of flame. So I just ran in screaming, fire, fire! So as the guys ran out to find hoses to start trying to protect our house, because we have huge bush in front of us, I rang the fire brigade. And I said, I need the fire brigade! And they said, so where do you live? I remembered that. I gave them the address. Then they said, what's the nearest cross street? In other words, what's the nearest big road to where you live? I couldn't have a clue. I could not remember. I'd lived there for several years. It was like, I don't know. And I said, I don't know. I can't think. Now, thank God they had us on the map already to put my address in. They found where we were. But I couldn't think where I lived. Why? Because at this point, it's really hard to think clearly. So if that happened to you, you're normal. And yesterday we spent a lot of time saying, you're normal. Turn to the person next to you and say, you are normal. Really important to feel normal. Okay, then after we've come out of that shock phase, emotions start to rise. Now they don't have to be in that order, and you can see it's a messy maze. In other words, you can go from one emotion to the other, and even if you really look at one emotion, you can go back to another emotion and then come back to the first emotion. It's a maze, it's messy, but it's powerful. Emotions are really powerful. So some of the strong emotions are anger. Anger is probably coming out in your community now of how on earth could that happen to the main street. And you can see that people are trying to find who to blame. So they're blaming organizations and builders, or the government, or who knows who they're blaming, but they're trying to blame someone. That's part of anger. It's part of the grief process. I find it very funny in Australia. You can have some like really naughty kids who do something really bad, and their parents go, well, the government should do something about it. And so I know you're angry, but how about you as the parent do something about it? But they're trying to blame, and because they're angry, because they're upset, because they're in grief that their kids are really being naughty. Okay, so anger is one, a feeling of just sad. Just now we are told that beautiful people from Vanuatu are very happy. Normally your disposition is happy, but if you're not quite as happy right now, that's understandable. Your main street is gone. There's people grieving, lives have been lost. Your security has been threatened. So you may not feel quite as happy, and that's okay too. Confusion, not being able to think clearly or not knowing what to do in the next step. Now we are, 4 and a bit weeks in? But I bet you in that first week, people in the bread bank, yeah, your bosses are going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with these people? Where are we going to put them? And they were confused of like, what shall we do, until they came up with a solution. And I'm so glad you deal with money. Being from Australia, I thought the bread bank was like a food bank, where people came to get free bread, because we have a food bank in our church where people come to get free food. So I just thought they were lovely, caring for the hungry. That's funny. Okay, the cultural differences. And by the way, if we say anything which is very culturally wrong for you, I'm so sorry. Just blame the Aussies. Okay. All right. Feeling overwhelmed, feeling scared. What is the future going to be like? For some, lots of people, you're going to recover and your life will go on as normal. But for some of the people that you know, their life will never be normal again. People that have lost their loved ones, their normality has changed. It won't be normal. And they'll be afraid, what is my life going to look like now? So fear, uncertainty, very, very common, being scared. A sense of loneliness, you can feel isolated, especially if you're not talking to anyone. I do love the fact that in Vanuatu you have a big community feel, you help each other, but I wonder how much you open up honestly to each other. Very broadly, often in countries, the women speak easier to each other than the men. Is that true here in Vanuatu? Is it? You need. Or do men talk easily to each other? Pastor Zachariah, do you find that women will share their hearts easier with other women than men, or can men share easily too? What do you think? It depends. Okay. What do you think, brother? Brother Daniel, what do you think? You think it's easier for women than men? Okay. So there we go. In this room, my challenge to you is you need to speak to someone or you're going to feel lonely. You need to have people in your world that you can share how you're feeling. Please try and find a safe person, someone that you trust. And if you find it hard, look even harder to say, who can I trust? Start with maybe us, the team. We are here to help you, and then we'll be gone and we'll take your secrets to Australia and they'll never be heard of again. But try and find someone that you can share. Otherwise, grief is very much a lonely journey. So this is the maze of emotion. And we've got to process them. Yeah. Remember yesterday I told you, if you pretend you're not suffering emotions, it'll fester like rotten food and come out in other ways. So let's have a look at this again. These are some of the symptoms that people have. Those of you that were not here yesterday, have a little look and see if you can recognize those symptoms in yourself or the people around you. You know, some people are still shaking their head in disbelief that it's happened, but they may also be disbelieving what is happening in their future now, how it's unfolding. You probably saw people cry a lot or others withdraw, depending on the personality. But have a look at that. These are all normal responses. And if you felt it, you were normal. And if people around you are still here, that's normal. And our job is to help ourselves and other people through so they can do the journey of grief well. There's another lot. See that? Guilt. I'd love to ask publicly, but I know sometimes you're shy. Guilt. What could people feel guilty of at this time in the earthquake? I'm going to ask the Americans who are not shy in answering questions. What could people feel guilty about? Not being able to help more. Maybe you can't help financially or of your stuff or emotionally. And yeah, you can feel guilty about that. What else can we feel guilty over? Yes. So how come my colleague got injured or killed and I escaped totally? And you can have, we call that in Australia, survivor guilt. It's when you think, I escaped, they didn't, and we have to work through that. You know, when in Australia, several years ago, we had massive bushfires in Victoria, and an entire town, entire, got burnt to the ground, apart from 17 houses. And so, after 5 days, the government, after they'd swept through with special dogs to make sure there were no bodies in this entire town, they put us on buses. I was there as a chaplain, and we went with the people on a bus, 20 families at a time, to go and drive outside their address so they could see if their house was still there or not. Because part of grieving is you have to accept there's been a loss. And so my job was to look after and monitor a bus with the people in it as we drove around. And each time it was like a death scene. As we drove outside their home, they would go, yeah, my house, it has gone. And the reality, their grief journey fully began. But there was one guy, and I could see by him, he was so, his body language was so tense. And so I went over to him and said, hello, sir, how are you feeling? This is very hard for you. And he said, my house is one of those still standing. And he said, I feel so guilty. How could it be for me? And what are the other people going to think about me? And so I was a bit brave. And I said, do you want to know what they're thinking about you? And I went to a couple I'd just been speaking to and I said, this guy's house is still there. What do you feel about that? And they were, oh, we're so glad that your house is still there. That's fantastic. Good on you, mate. And he suddenly realized they're not feeling as bad about it as I thought they were. That's survivor guilt. Anyway, just for you to know that that can be the guilt. And then have a look at all these other ones. And those of you that weren't here yesterday, please take a look, and if you've got them, it's something that you need to work through. In the symptoms of grief, these are the effects on your body. Tonight, I'll unpack that. But just for you to know, grief is going to affect your entire being, and it's because of the stress response, the fight or flight response. So have a little look at that. And if you're worried, talk to a doctor. But they're often the physical symptoms of grief. Okay. All the way through the grief journey, you're going to have choices. And very soon you're going to hear a story of the choices someone had to make. But here's some of the choices. Will I be positive about this, or will I be negative? So right now with the earthquake, I wonder what you're thinking. Will good come out of this? Will we rebuild? Will our community be stronger? Can I get through? Can I be stronger? Or are you thinking this is all too hard? We'll never be the same. It's going to be awful. The way you approach it is going to make a huge difference, and you're the only one with control over that. Other questions, can I be proactive and actually do something to help others, even if just by being there? You might not be able to rebuild, you might not be able to give money, you may not have enough food for somebody else, but you can just be there. That's a great way to help others. Looking at the way you process your anger and other emotions, your faith. What are you thinking about God? That was very powerful this morning when we heard that some people think it's judgment, and Pastor Ralph beautifully unpacked that no, it's not judgment of God, because good people were affected as well as bad people. Yeah? So please don't let that judgment of God come into it. I was in Sri Lanka dealing with so many pastors and Christians who had lost their families in the tsunami. It wasn't just people that lived wrong or were of different faiths. We had beautiful people of our faith die as well. Multi families die. Wasn't the judgment of God. That was a natural disaster. And this has been a natural disaster as well. So you're really going to have to think that through. Okay, just discuss it. And if we only just challenge you about it, just think it through. But God is there to help and bring us through as well. He is the one that walks beside us. He's there on your side. Okay. As people go through their journey, processing their emotions, trying to make sense of what's gone on, you will fluctuate. So I'm just going to explain this model to you. You can take a little picture, but this is the fluctuation. Maybe you're one of those that have lost their home. Is there anyone in this room that actually did lose your home and you can't live in it right now? Because this would be a bit too close. Anyone like that? Okay, then I can use this illustration safely. I just don't want to cause you to be emotional. You think of the people that are losing their home. This is what they do, okay? They've lost their home. They've got lots of pain and grief. They can't live in that place. And so they're going to go through all sorts of emotions: anger, sadness, sorrow, confusion. What am I going to do? Fear of the future. And they have to make decisions. Will I rebuild or not? So you might come across to this bit of, actually, we can rebuild. We can. We'll work it out. But then they go back into grief. But it's going to cost so much money, and will it happen again? If we rebuild, will it happen? I don't want to rebuild. But yes, we can rebuild and sort of build a new life. We'll do it better. We'll just build better. Now, let's move away. Let's go somewhere else. If we went somewhere else, we'd have to start a new community. So, no, we're going to stay here. We're going to do it. And there's the dilemmas of letting go of that which was lost, going into a new norm, forging out life again in a new way, and you go back and forth, back and forth. And every grief that you go through in life, not just the earthquake, you will have go back and forth. Earlier last year, my son, I have 2 sons and a daughter, my middle son came to me and said, "Hey Mum, Job has suggested that I apply for a job in Saudi Arabia." Do you know where that is? That's the Middle East. Not my favorite area. My son is married and he has a little 2-year-old that I would look after 1 day a week. And it's like, really? Can you leave your daughter with me? But anyway, once he told me that, I had to start my grieving process. And I was angry. God, don't you let that happen. Please don't let him get the job. Anyone else can get the job, don't let him get it. Guess what? Out of all the people around the world, he got the job. I said to God, "God, why are you letting this happen? For one thing, I won't get my little granddaughter for at least 3 years, and I'm going to miss them, and I don't like the country, and I'm not sure if it's safe, and blah, blah, blah." And I was having a big whinge. And then God dealt with me. I went over this. Oh, how did that happen? I went over this side, and God said, "I love Saudi Arabia, and if I open the door, let him go." All right, if I have to, back here. But I want my little granddaughter every week. Oh, I'm going to miss them so much. I love my family, and God, do you have to do that? Can you stop it? Okay, God, but am I going to believe that you're in control or not? I don't want them to go. Right. Over to you. And that escalated, and they've gone. And I'm mostly over here now, and thank God for WhatsApp and Messenger and phone calls. But it's still the grief journey, and that is what the grief journey is like. We go back and forth and back and forth. And every day we're having to make decisions that will affect the way we come out of that grief journey. So, what is a new normal? It's making a new life without either the thing or the person that you lost. You adjust to it. So if you've lost a person, it's a new way of living without the person. If you've had a marriage breakdown, it's a new way of living without that marriage. If it's you've lost your job, a new way of living in a different job or without a job. It's any sort of way which is new here. But the person you are there will be influenced by the choices you make here. So if you choose to be positive, you choose to hold on to faith, you choose to look for the good, you will come out sweet, like Kathy. So those of you that spoke to her yesterday, you had no idea that she'd been through all of that. Because she's sweet, she's lovely. Yeah? But she could have been, how did this happen to me? It should never have happened to me. That is so unfair. And I'm going to be angry at God, and I'm going to be angry at you, because you didn't stop it either. And I'm just going to be angry, and I'm going to be miserable. If she was like that, she would not have been on this trip. Because she would be one, I would care for her, but not have too close ministry. But it's not, because she's made the right choices, and that's our choices. And when you're helping other people right now, you can encourage them, show them that, and say the way you respond is going to influence who you are. And I've used this time after time in so many settings, and I've had people go, I've got to make the right choice. I've been heading towards being a grumpy old man or a grumpy old woman. I don't want to be that. I want to be a person that has come through sweet so I can help others. Okay? So that's your choice. But let me tell you some of the things that this new normal is not. Okay? Because people say, well, let me tell you what they do say. It means that it's a slow acceptance of the loss. I deal a bit with people who have lost children. Losing a child is probably the worst loss you can have. And if you're in the room and that's you, my heart feels for you. And people say to me, well, how long will it take the parent to recover? What do you mean by recover? Does it mean that you forget that you had a child? No, never. And I'm going to give you an illustration of that right now. But people just want to rush hurting people through. And if you look up here, it says the grief journey takes as long as it takes. So it may take years for somebody to recover from a severe loss. We have to be patient, especially with multiple losses. We will be patient with Kathy. She doesn't demand a lot of our patience because she's doing well, but we will be patient. But parents or people that have lost a spouse after being married for years, we have to be so patient with them. So getting to this area here can take years. This whole process can take a long time, depending on how much you allow the emotions to come out and deal with them properly. So it's a slow acceptance. It does not mean that we will forget the person or the thing that was lost. And it doesn't mean that we will not feel pain. If you've got a loved one that you've lost, I bet you every birthday that comes around, you think of them, and it hurts a bit. Christmas comes, it hurts a bit. And even as the years go on, the sorrow might get a bit less and less, but you're still going to feel on the anniversary days. And that's okay, that's normal. Let's see if we can just stand. There we go. And it doesn't mean that it was fair or okay. Was it fair that Elizabeth, the little granddaughter, died before she was born? No. Was it okay? No. But they've come to terms with, we have to leave this in the sovereign hands of God. Okay? But it doesn't always mean it's okay. And the people that have had a loss forced on them by someone else's actions, it takes a while to work through forgiveness and get to that. Forgiveness is a journey. Forgiveness is not a one-off prayer. Forgiveness is a journey. Well, I have time to unpack this. So forgiveness, I see, is like an onion. You have onions here, don't you? Yeah? Okay. Have you heard this before? Forgiveness is like an onion? No? You're intrigued, aren't you? Next time you chop an onion, you're going to be thinking of forgiveness. So what do I mean? It's easy to forgive somebody that says, I don't like your clothes today. That's easy. But when someone's hurt you to the very core, maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe it's a spouse or a partner that has betrayed you. Maybe it's a family member that has done wrong to you. Maybe someone's ripped you off. Maybe your boss has ripped you off. Something that has really, really hurt you. What does forgiveness mean? Forgiveness is not, well, that was okay. No. Some of the things that people do to others is never okay. Some of the things that has been done to me is not okay, and it will never be okay. It was never a good thing to happen. So forgiveness is not saying it was okay. What forgiveness eventually has to be is saying, what you did was not okay. In fact, for some of you, what has been done to you was disgusting and disgraceful and evil and demonic and should never have happened. But if it did, then we have to say, I now release the consequences of that into God's hands to deal with you. Because some people have hurt me and we just had to go, God, I leave them to you. I now say, you deal with them. And this is where you really know you are on the pathway to forgiveness, is when you can say, God, if you want to bless them, bless them. If you want to deal with them, deal with them. I'm just leaving them to you. When you can pray, if you want to bless them, you know you've done very well on the journey to forgiveness. But why is it like an onion? Because the first time, we'll call Fred, the first time Fred hurt me, oh, let me get to somewhere too. You can't truly forgive until you truly feel the depth of the pain. Yeah? So, just choose which illustration. Say somebody has abused you, okay? And somebody says, oh, in the end, you have to forgive them. You can never truly forgive that abuse until you realize, my goodness, it has affected the way I trust people. It has affected the way I have relationships with other people. It may have affected you physically. You have to deal with that. But those consequences of that abuse might take years for you to unfold. And in the unfolding of that, you can't forgive until you're having to deal with the pain that keeps coming up with it. And you can't minimize it, but you really have to realize, I have been hurt to this level, and now I'm going to forgive from that depth of level. And that's starting to peel off the layer of an onion. So pretend you've got the onion to start with, and you have to forgive Fred. So I go, okay, God, he has really hurt me, and I realize the depth, but I have to leave and forgive him. So Father, just unpack that. And as you give it over to God, it's like taking off a layer of an onion. I think I've dealt with it, but it's only a layer. And then a few months later, I might see Fred in the street and something happens in my heart and I think, oh, he was a monster. Oh, Hang on, Lord, I've got to hand him to you. Heal my pain. I hand that to you. And another layer comes off the onion. And then I think, oh, done. I've forgiven him. Yeah, I can go to church and not feel guilty. Yeah, I can take communion and not feel guilty. Yeah, I've forgiven. And then something comes up and it's like, that Fred. Ugh. Oh my goodness, I haven't forgiven. And so again, I come back to God. God, I hand him to you. Do what you like with him. Help me just release that anger that I have. I give him back to you. It's another layer of the onion. And I think, that's got to be it. That's got to be it. And then I see a picture of Fred and something happens. And I think, didn't I forgive him? How many times have I got to forgive him? As many times as the layer is in the onion. And I don't know how big it is. But one day, I see and I say, God, I just forgive Fred. And God, if you want to bless Fred, then you bless Fred. And I walk away, and God's going, that was the last bit of the onion. It's gone. You now have truly forgiven, and it's not going to hold you anymore. It's not going to negatively impact you. And sometimes the onion's only got a couple of layers. You can forgive easy. Sometimes it's got multi-layers. And the bigger the hurt, the bigger the pain, the longer that process might be, unless you get a miracle. But most people don't get an immediate forgiveness miracle. It's a process to walk through. But you can get there. And that was not in my notes, but see, somebody needed to hear that. Just know that forgiveness is like an onion. Okay? All right. Put that back in here. Okay. Doesn't mean it's lost or fair. We won't always have sorrow with our memories. We accept it, forgive, okay? We're willing to try new relationships. If you've been hurt by somebody, go through the grieving journey. You'll know you're healed when you start to be willing to try new relationships again. Spiritually, you start to get it right with God. If you are angry with God, just take it to Him and say, God, I'm a bit angry at you because I don't understand fully. Can you please help me not be angry? And God will speak to you. He helped Kathy. He did enough for Kathy for her to live with. He's done enough with me over the years that I can live with. So God wants to help you through it. And you can understand that joy and loss are part of life. Good things happen to good and bad. Bad things happen to good and bad people. It's part of life. But all I know through it all, we have a Heavenly Father that is a good Father and wants to bring your life into a destiny, a purpose. But it doesn't mean it's going to be all good. It's going to mean you're going to have to navigate some pain along the way, but pain is good for us. But that's for another seminar. Okay, so what I'd love you to do, okay, we've got a bit of time. I'm going to give you 10 minutes in your groups. Just, if you're safe there, maybe describe a grief journey. If it's not too painful, don't pick your worst one if it's too painful. A grief journey that you've gone on, even if it's like losing something you loved or an accident or a relationship breakdown that is, not too painful. And maybe describe how it was, how you went through the emotions, the choices you had to face, and how you come out into your new normal, okay? Just so you can apply what we've been learning there to your lives and you'll be able to identify it. So if you're brave, just do that. I'm not going to get you to share it publicly, but just share about that. Then we'll come back and I want to finish with a very powerful illustration at the end, okay? So maybe my team, if you can join a group and just help some facilitation as well, that would be lovely. Okay, so about 10 minutes. Be brave, have a share together. I know for us all it's very emotional as we share our journeys, and I thank you, especially those of you that talked. Thank you. Thank you. We honor that and we hold that story sacred to this room. And just remember, If it's your story, you can tell it anywhere you like. If it's not your story, it stays in this room. Okay? So what you've just heard stays in this room. Okay. All right, one last illustration which really ministered to me, and I know blesses a lot of people who have had a severe loss, especially of a child or a loved one that is very precious to you. Because sometimes we'll go through grief and the journey down the track, people say to you, well, you should be over it by now. I don't know what that over it by now means. But let me give you an illustration for those of you who yourself have gone through this or you know people have gone through it. Imagine I have a garden and the garden has got the most magnificent tree in the garden. And I love the tree. It's beautiful, it's big, it's got big branches. And one day I go into the garden and somebody's cut it down and all that is left is a stump. So this is the stump. And it's like, what happened to my tree? All I've got is this stump just stuck there. I want my tree. A bit like, what's happened? I've just lost somebody I love. Okay, so that's the parallel that we're looking at. So I've got this stump in my garden, and every time I come to the garden, it's like, I don't want that stump. I want the tree. I hate this stump. Why is this stump? I want the tree. I want the tree. This is the grief journey, grieving for that which I have lost. And after a little while, when I've stopped my crying a little bit, and it's like, okay, I'm going to plant some flowers around the stump. So I plant some beautiful plants around the stump, and they grow and they're beautiful. But every time I look at it, it's like, yeah, the flowers are nice. I miss my tree. I miss my tree. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to build a beautiful fountain over here with little waterfalls running down, and it's going to be beautiful. And when I come into my garden, I'm going to enjoy the beautiful noise of the waterfall. And so I build it, and now I come into the garden, I go, gee, that's a nice waterfall. Oh, and look at the flowers. But I still miss my tree. So I build a barbecue area here, picnic table, beautiful wooden Vanuatu timber, and beautiful wood, and it's just gorgeous, and people come in, and so I invite friends over. Kathy, come for a barbecue. And Kathy comes in, and she goes, oh, lovely garden, Anne. Look at your beautiful barbecue. Oh, look at that waterfall. Look at your flowers. It's beautiful. Gee, Anne's got it all together. And Anne goes, yeah, she's in my garden. She's seeing how I've rebuilt my life with my barbecue and the waterfall. She's seeing the flowers. She's not noticing my stuff. Only I've got the stuff. It's in my mind. I miss my tree. So I've managed to create a whole new normal. And it's beautiful. And for many people, they're just going to come into my garden and they're going to see how beautiful it is. And they may never realize what's missing. But I do. And it's okay to have a stump until the day I die. Just because you're a Christian and God heals our heart doesn't mean that we will not miss that person for the rest of our lives till we are reunited in eternity. And we do a disservice when we dismiss the love that people have had and the space and the missing that they have of someone. Because there are many of us that will go to heaven with a stump, and that's okay. You're allowed to have stumps, okay? So I hope that helps someone because it's so real. And like with Kathy, you never knew she had 4 stumps until she shared her journey today. We don't see that. But if you yourself have a stump, it's normal and it's okay. All right?